Well, one of a chorus of economists to warn these latest figures do not mean we have dodged a bullet is Kiwibank's chief economist, Jarrod Kerr, and he joins me now. Kia ora, Jarrod. I've got your analysis of these figures in front of me today. The title says simply unbelievable. So is the unemployment figure a fiction or is it flawed?
Bit of both, actually. Basically, it's so unbelievable that you just cannot believe what's being put out.
What's wrong with it?
Well, I mean, in order to be deemed unemployed, you have to be actively seeking work, and it's a bit difficult to actively seek work when you're in a lockdown. The Stats Department should have actually looked through this and referred more to the expanded unemployment rate, which they have in their report, and that was 4.6%, but it was actually trending higher and at 4.9% by the end of the quarter. And I think that gives a bit more of an accurate reflection of what's happening. It's a move from 4.2 towards 5. We were forecasting 5.2, and this is just the start. So we really need to see what happens after the wage subsidies stop, and that's where I think most of us are forecasting another leg higher in the unemployment rate towards 9%.
One of the banks is saying that it should be disregarded, this figure. Do you agree? Is it not worth the paper it's written on?
No, completely disregard it and look at the other stats within the report. So the underutilisation rate, I think, gives you a better idea. That rose from a little over 10% to 12%. That tells you that the number of people who are underemployed increased. So you may have a job earning 15 hours worth of work a week, but you actually want 30, 40 hours work. And the anecdotes that you showed on your show just before, I think, reflect that nicely.
So what role has the wage subsidy played here?
I think it's played a very good role of putting a Band-Aid over a pretty nasty wound. But when we rip that Band-Aid off, we'll get a better feel as to how that wound has healed. And there'll be some big decisions being made by employers as to whether they can keep these employees on after that subsidy is finished. And I think, that is when the true test comes, and that is when we will find out exactly, how many people have been displaced on the back of the lockdowns.
Jarrod, are you expecting that to be relatively immediate?
Yes. What's unusual about this whole COVID-19 lockdown is that everything was immediate. We went straight into lockdown, then we came straight out of lockdown, and a lot of the economy's gone back to how it was quite quickly, a lot faster than we thought. So it's generally a good news story. But then there are parts, within tourism and hospitality who are sort of holding on by a thread, and part of that thread is the wage subsidy. So I think once that stops, I think a lot of these companies will just have to do what they have to do, and there's downsides. And that's when we'll see, a lot of these workers coming into the market looking for other jobs.
I just want to read you something that was written today. It says the unemployment numbers show the robustness of the economy. New Zealanders will notice in their communities that the economy is back up and running. Do you agree with that? Did this figure show the robustness of the economy?
No, it doesn't, and I do not believe in that statement. If you actually go through the report in some detail, you'll see that there's a lot of slack that's developing beneath the surface. As I said, with that rise in underutilisation rates, the decline in the employment rate, the fact that hours worked was down 10% on the quarter. I mean, that was a huge drop. And hourly earnings was also quite soft, and that was pushed higher by the minimum wage hike being forced through in April. So, there is a lot of weakness beneath the surface, and we are by no means out of this. And I think the next two employment reports will be critical.
That was actually written by Grant Robertson. It was in the Finance Minister's press release today. So do you think he's looking at it with rose-tinted glasses?
Well, I'd like to see what else he's written about us. I'm sure he wrote more than just that. But to look at the unemployment rate alone and say that, we've actually strengthened as a labour market because it's gone from 4.2 to 4, I think is wrong. I think that's a spurious read.
What do we need here then? So there's no sign that the wage subsidy is going to be continued. You say that the sugar hit from immediate spending after the lockdown, well, that's going to wear off. So what do we need here? What's the shot in the arm?
We really need to look at where these jobs are being lost, and we all know roughly where they're coming from. It's just tourism and services and hospitality, and start thinking about how we repurpose these jobs and how we retrain these people into other areas. The simple answer so far has been, well, people that are displaced from Queenstown, for example, could just pick up a spade and start digging a road somewhere. The problem with that is that the jobs that have been lost are actually predominantly women's jobs, and the jobs that we're trying to stimulate are actually predominantly men's jobs. So we're trying to stimulate construction, which is sort of 70-80% men, and what we're losing is hospitality jobs, which is, I think, 60-70% women. And in the report, what I found staggering was of the 11,000 decline in employment, 10,000, so 90%, were women over the quarter losing their jobs.
So should the government be targeting any assistance to female-dominated industries?
Absolutely. Yep. You deal with the problem at hand, and that problem has showed itself. We flagged it as a risk earlier in the year because we looked at what industries would most likely be impacted by extended lockdowns and border closures. And, we sort of realised that 60-70% of those jobs were female-dominated jobs, and there needs to be a focus on getting women into other industries, trying to get them into construction, obviously, but also trying to find other roles in our economy.
Good to talk to you. That is Kiwibank's Chief Economist, Jarrod Kerr there. Now, Checkpoint did request an interview with the Finance Minister, Grant Robertson. He declined.